What is going on, Notre Dame fans? Mike Singer from blueandgold.com with former Fighting Irish captain and linebacker Mike Goolsby. We are live on a Sunday night. Appreciate you guys live with us, and to those who watching back, we appreciate you as well. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. Helps support us what we're doing at Blue and Gold. Mike, I branded this show the Mike Goolsby Show. I just kind of made that up today. Straight to the
Okay.
point. Do you like it?
Oh, straight to the point's my style, Mike. So, yeah, it works. It's very fitting.
Well, since straight to the point's your style, I'll screw with you a little bit. Let's just kind of beat around the bush for a bit. Kidding, of course. Make sure you drop your questions for Mike Goolsby. We will certainly get to those throughout the show, but Mike and I got some things we want to talk about too. Let's pull up my notes here for you, Mike. Where do you want to start? You want to start quarterbacks? Let's save the quarterbacks. So we get some more people in the show, but you had texted me. You want to talk about the receivers? That's certainly been a topic of discussion when you look at whether it's drop balls or Michael Mayer and the running backs continuing to kind of lead the way and with catching the football. What do you think about the receivers right now? And I know you want to talk about their body language.
I just, yeah, it became apparent a quarter or two into the game, like the receivers seemed disengaged slash frustrated slash annoyed, almost, and I'm talking specific to body language, almost borderline like pouty. Um, Cone was a little bit inaccurate or very inaccurate. This is It's such an interesting topic. These Notre Dame quarterbacks, Mike. One day we'll be able to put this to bed. But so Cohn was inaccurate yesterday, but of course there's a drop touchdown by Lenzy.
Right.
So and I was been kind of active on the message boards the last 24 hours, and it's like, well, some of Cohn's misses, they're sort of overlooked because you had this obvious drop in the back of the end zone by Lenzy. But as we mentioned last week, I try and look at things from a player's perspective, and those guys are so disengaged that maybe when Lenzy's number was called, he wasn't dialed in. And of course, players need to be dialed in, and Coach Alexander needs to, jump down their throat and get them motivated or whatever. But it seems like the receivers were disengaged, and frustrated, and inevitably we're going to get into the quarterback conversation. But was Cohn's inaccuracy what, like, these guys are getting open and he can't get me the ball, um, on the money? Is that part of the problem? Um, or Mike, and this I'm always trying to bring kind of a unique perspective. When you watch our offense have success in the passing game, specific to the passing game here, more often than not, Mike, it seems that the throws that we connect on, they're schemed open. Kyron's first, or Cohen's first touchdown of the game to Kyron on that little motion to empty, quick motion to empty, one-on-one with the linebacker. He runs an inside slant. That's a scheme. Like, to me, watching the game twice, it seems as if Cohen knows where he's going with the ball on many of those throws. Whether it's and Avery Davis is, it's a scheme play. Of course, he's looking at that safety, but he knows pre-snap this is where, there's a high probability this is where I'm going with the ball. So when you take that into account, so if Kyron's the number one and there really is no two or three in terms of a progression, your receivers are going to get lazy, and they are going to become disengaged. And if on that Avery Davis's post route, or excuse me, um, yeah, I guess post, on his catch, it's like these other guys, maybe they realize they're not getting the ball. So there's something going on there. And you don't see in this specific to Kevin Austin, you didn't see him it started to show its head in our week two matchup, and you saw more of it in week three. Um, he can't beat a press, like he can't gain inside leverage on a corner. So on some of those inaccurate deep balls by Cone, you have to put some of that blame on Kevin Austin because he's not giving Cohen a lot of real estate to fit that ball into the boundary. So that's why they always sail wide. So if Austin could get a better inside release, and then he would give Cohen more real estate to kind of fit that ball in. So it's kind of a 50-50 deal. But yeah, it was really interesting to see. It was very blatant the lack of, I'll call it lack of engagement from the receivers, and
Sure.
just they looked kind of annoyed. Jumped out to me.
I mean, it, Braden Lindsey's got to catch that football. They can be annoyed
Yeah, well,
all they want, but they got to catch the darn ball.
I don't disagree with you. Yeah, there's too many drops. I mean, Austin didn't have a reception, and they're trying to get the ball into him, but it's like I said, it's kind of a mix of him not being able to get off of a press, an inaccurate day by the quarterback, and Cohen does get a bit of a pass because the dislocated finger, right? I mean, I dislocated a pinky once, and of course, I didn't have to go throw a ball 6 days later, but I am assuming it was a factor. I don't know how much he threw during the course of the week at practice. But yeah, something was just off. And I mean, that was, when we do these, Mike, you tend to ask or kind of open it up. It's like, what's your overall thoughts or what's your overall impression from the game? And, I watched like the Auburn Penn State game. I mean, I watched a little bit of that Fresno State game. It's like, why can't we ever have just like a clean, crisp operation on offense? Why does everything have to look so damn clunky all the time? Our first 3 series were brutal. I mean, you've got false starts. We've got corner blitzes. Your left tackle's not touching a soul. Your left guard's not touching a soul. Taking sacks. Coach Reese is trying to do things to his credit, trying to run a little bit of misdirection on a third down, and we just give up backside pressure and we get Kyron smoked. It's like, when can we just get into kind of a groove? Why do we always have to go through we're trudging through mud until we finally started to pick up some tempo up on offense and kind of got our motor running. So I think that's just becoming super frustrated to watch. It's like you watch all these other marquee type programs and they just throw the ball around, 5-yard gains here. Everything looks much more crisp, and Notre Dame hasn't looked crisp on offense in forever. And I don't know what it is. I'm looking forward to going on the road. It's going to be a hell of a matchup in Soldier Field, but I think it'll be good for the team to get on the road and maybe get some,
Sure.
Just kind of start over in a sense, really get into the season here.
So I'm live with Mike Goolsby, the recently named Mike Goolsby show here at blueandgold.com. So make sure you drop that thumbs up if you want Mr. Goolsby to answer your question right away. Drop us a super chat. We will get to it right away since we are very easily bought. Otherwise, we will get to your questions in just a little bit. A good bit of them we will cover already. So, but again, drop super chat. We'll get to it right away. Mike, something I wanted to kind of discuss and get your thoughts on is, so we talked about the deep balls a little bit with Jack Cohn. I feel like for the common fan, they see the miss, right? Jack Cohn's taking a bunch of shots to Kevin Austin, and unless it is blatantly dropped, like the one Braden Lindsey had in the end zone, the blame gets put on the quarterback. But to me, I'm thinking about like, does Notre Dame even attempt those last year? Like, I mean, Jack Cohn is at least putting you in the situation to where you can have those deep passes, and he's just barely missing them by like inches. And I'm seeing so much blame towards Jack Cohn for like doing things that Notre Dame hasn't had at the quarterback position in years, being able to take shots downfield. It's kind of like a law of averages. They're going to hit on some of those. I mean, if it were very easy to just chuck the ball downfield and complete 70 to 80% of them, I mean, every team would do it. Notre Dame obviously completed, 10% of them? Their deep shots, the one to Davis they, scored on. But I'm just kind of like, man, like Jack Cohn's just getting all the blame when it's not all of his fault. You mentioned the route running by Kevin Austin, maybe not helping Cone. Maybe he slowed down at one point in his route, which threw off Cone. And it's not like those are, bubble screens like that he's throwing. It's not a it's a difficult pass. And you watch the NFL quarterbacks miss deep balls all the time. So you've been smirking for a little bit, Goolsby. Are you in agreement with me, or am I crazy here?
No, you're not wrong, Mike. You're not wrong, but you're also um, one of the most kind people I've ever met. You're very kind and by nature, right? You're probably more of an optimist than I
Well,
am by
let,
nature.
let me
Go
add
ahead.
this before you go. If the blame everyone were just pissed at Kevin Austin and Braden Lindsey today, you know what I would be doing? I'd be like, well, Jack Cohn needs to come, throw him a little bit better. So I'm very much always trying to, I don't know if you want to call it play devil's advocate, but like, I don't like the blame going on one person or figure, coach, whatever it is, because it's just a group effort. I really feel like that. And we've even had a comment here on the YouTube. Joe says, was Lindsey's drop due to having to look in the sun? If that's the case, then the problem was route selection. I mean, like, I wouldn't go as far as that. Lindsey's got to catch the football regardless. But still, that's even another factor. So, all right, go ahead,
Yeah,
Mike.
yeah. But to answer that question, yes, sun played a factor there. You could almost see how it was um, playing into the game in terms of like it was almost like what we traditionally think about wind in terms of like um, Mother Nature factoring into a game. But yes, at times at Notre Dame Stadium, like you could be on one side of the stadium and be burnt to a crisp in terms of sun, and then you're on the other side. It's just yeah, that's definitely a factor. So getting back to cone receivers or whatever, so
Yeah,
we can hash this out, Mike. And neither one of us are right, and neither one of us are wrong. We're just having a dialogue, right? And
sure.
sometimes we need more dialogue in our lives. But was Cohn inaccurate yesterday? Objectively speaking, was he inaccurate?
The completion percentage wasn't great, 15 to 31. I thought I mean, I just think about a lot of the
He
deep
almost got
balls he
Mike. He
missed
almost got. He almost got our best player on offense killed, Michael Mayer. That
on
was
that
an
little
that was
crosser.
literally go back and watch that play. Now, granted, he had to move out of the pocket, and that's the beauty of football is 11 things, 11 different individuals need to sync up, and we're not there yet. But he had to move out of the pocket. Actually, the pocket was kind of closing in on this particular throw to Mayer, I think in the third quarter.
Yeah.
That was literally a 5 yard throw. That was playing catch with your 5 year old nephew, and threw it high and away, and may have got the wind knocked out of him or whatever. But Cohn was inaccurate yesterday. Is that due to the finger? Is that due to him being a little bit having to move more in the pocket that he's comfortable? He looked great yesterday in terms of again sliding, being evasive in the pocket. Is it due to poor releases by the wide receiver? And again, he doesn't have enough real estate. It's a lot. But at the end of the day, you're playing quarterback, and you get your name in the paper, and you get
Right.
all the love and all the adulation, and then you also take all the brunt of the blame. Sometimes it's just the nature of the position,
Except from me.
um,
I don't do it.
except for Mike Singer, yeah. But I mean, so and I'm rooting for Jack Cohn, but you can say that he was inaccurate yesterday, and I'll get a pass. I will also say that yes, he is pulling the trigger. We are throwing the ball deep, and we haven't seen that in the last several seasons because he is willing to pull the trigger, but if you're pulling the trigger and you're throwing a deep ball, but you're connecting on it 10% of the time, it's like, right? I mean, um, and then we end up in we're punting, and then we take a lot of sacks. So he takes a lot of sacks, and those are negative plays. Whereas, Buckner's first series, he picked up a first down on, and Cone would have got eaten alive on that play. So it's just really interesting. And if the coaching staff, Mike, had never rolled out Buckner, if he was still on the shelf, I don't think there would be as much dialogue about the pros and cons and the strengths and weaknesses of Cone. It's like Notre Dame has kind of created this monster. We're not talking about rotation at linebacker or something
Right.
like that, right? This is again the marquee position. So I don't think I want to be smart with my words. I'll try to be. I don't think it's fair to put all the blame on Cone. It's not. but he has regressed since the Florida State game. The Florida State game, we were in awe. Like, wow, we've been waiting years to see this offense, and we have taken some steps back. It's just, and that's objective. What's subjective is that fans seem to think that Buckner can't throw the ball because this is me kind of filling in some blanks, but it seems like fans don't believe that Tyler can throw the ball because he's such an excellent runner. That's interesting. I think that's unfair. It's unfair to put all the blame on Cone, and I think it's unfair to say that Tyler can't throw the ball accurately. To me, and I don't have, I haven't gained much respect as a quarterback evaluator, although I don't think anybody would have thought Ian Book would have been a fourth-round pick, much less a first-round pick. But Tyler Buckner's got a live arm. He can spin it, and he had a drop by Kevin Austin yesterday, and that was a perfectly placed ball. You said on last night's show it was a little bit ahead of him.
I thought it was.
You go back and watch it.
Okay.
Oh, dude, it was on the money. He led him, and that's one-on-one with the safety. It's a catchable ball. It hit him in the hands. It's maybe a half a step in front of him. But that's the way that play is designed. The receiver's kind of carrying some momentum, right? That's the way it's designed. So, Buckner's inaccurate. Who knows? And I was thinking about your question you asked last week, Mike, which is a great question. It's like, would you rather have Tyler Buckner be your quarterback and go 7-5, or would you rather go, lose 2 games with Cone? And I think Wisconsin's going to give us a hell of a game, and they're coming off of a bye week. We've been susceptible to big runs, and we know that's the strength of their offense, is that running game. So if we lose to Wisconsin, it'll be interesting to see how much more PT or playing time that they give Tyler. That's going to be curious to see.
My next question for you is, I don't have the snap counts in front of me. I'd probably guess Buckner got in between 6 and 10 snaps. Were you a little bit
less than week 2?
Yeah. So it was 19 snaps first week. Now Kelly said post game that Buckner was dinged up. I think it was a hamstring. I can't remember what the injury was, but so that's why he didn't play in the second half to injury. So how much do you want to see Buckner versus Wisconsin? Because I feel like if you put Jack Cohn on last year's team, he's a lot better because a statue-ish quarterback needs that. But, Ian Book is better suited for this team because he runs so much. He didn't, need to run at times last year, but this year he does. I feel like you're kind of doing that grin smile where you're proud of me a little bit for my take. Is that what you're getting right now?
No, it's a great observation. It's a great observation, and it's true. And I just keep thinking how fascinating this conversation is as a whole. Right. It's just, yes, if you put Cohn in at quarterback last year and is willing to pull the trigger and push the ball downfield, and he has time and he's protected, he feels safe back there, awesome. I don't think that Cohn's as statuesque and as stiff as a lot of people do. He moves fine for the position.
Right.
He moves fine for the position, but if you're the downside of Cohn, if we're going to, and we didn't see as much RPO this week as we did the week prior, but if you're going to try and use that RPO quarterback read, he's ineffective there. And it's not his fault. It's just the way he is. So I don't know if you asked the question, Mike, but do I want to see more Tyler Buckner?
Yeah.
I do want to see more Tyler Buckner, but you got to give the kid a chance. And watching the TV broadcast, was it Corey Robinson and what was the other guy's name? I can't think.
The halftime?
The halftime. Who's the
Jack
young kid on there?
Yeah,
Jack Collinsworth. Sorry, forgive me, Jack. They were talking to Tim Brown about Tyler, and Tim Brown said, I think they got to give him a chance. The Notre Dame coaching staff has got to give him a chance, which is ironic, Mike, because just putting him out there just to run the ball as a gadget guy, you're not giving him a chance. So let him go play the position. So it's on the coaching staff to develop him. And I know people have strong feelings on Kelly's ability to develop a quarterback, but I just look at it big picture, Mike. If we're going to be a big time national championship program, you have to have a big time quarterback. It's just the way the world
Of course.
works. It's just the way, and everybody else, all these other top 5 programs have them, and Cone isn't that, right? And that's fine. So, but yes, you have to give Cone's your starter, but if you're going to put Buckner in, let him run the offense. And to my earlier point, some of these throws, that throw to Kyron, that quick slant, Tyler can make that throw. Tyler can make that throw to Avery Davis. So it's not like I sometimes think we're giving Cone a little bit too much credit and that he's going through these progressions, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, no, that's a beautiful scheme by Coach Reese to make that man open. And I think that Tyler can deliver the ball there. I really do. And I think that he gives us some escapability that Jack doesn't right now.
Okay. So
I think that's inarguable.
So
you don't think he can complete that inside slant to Kyron? He absolutely can.
Oh, I know
And also, it's like, well, Buckner. I was just on the message board before we got on here. Buckner can't throw the ball. That's why they don't let him throw it. Okay, well, if he can't throw the ball, how did he beat out Clark and how did he beat out Pine to become the second string quarterback as a true freshman who's played like 1 year of high school football? So both things can't be true.
So let's go back to give the reins to Buckner and go win 8 games versus that hypothetical.
I'm not saying give. I'm just saying.
Okay, I'm just saying. Where do you stand on that? I'm
saying sprinkle him in, but you can't just leave him back there to be a running back, a glorified running back. Let him run the offense. So, hey, Tyler, we're going to run that same formation. So we're going to be in 11 personnel. Kyron's going to motion empty, and you're going to look here, right? You're going to look. That's your read. So why can't he do that? Notre Dame has been super conservative in terms of like their offensive approach the last few years, and Book was entrenched as the starter. Nobody ever told me this, right? You're trying to connect dots, Mike, but I would assume that Book was entrenched as your starter maybe mostly because he didn't turn the ball over. Granted, he would never throw it when he wanted to, but at least he didn't turn the ball over. So you're going to ride with the lesser of two evils. So I think it's lame, and I think it's ultra conservative to put Tyler out there as a glorified running back. Like, trust the kid's ability. He's a potential 5-star type kid, right? He really is. And let him throw the ball. And then you got a real controversy on your hands. If they let him throw the ball and run the offense through him. So Jack is your starter. Like, this is the Andy Dalton, Justin Fields argument.
Right.
So Cone is your starter. If we lose to Wisconsin, you're going to start to see more Tyler because it's okay. And you lose another game potentially. So, and let me put one little last kind of thought in here. If the offensive line could somehow miraculously fix itself, roll with Cone.
Yeah.
That's the other element to this. You tend to think some of this stuff, Josh Lugg's getting just dump trucked. Some of this stuff is physical mistakes. And sometimes those are almost more forgivable. You almost feel bad for that kid just getting dumped. But what I had mentioned on one of the first couple series of the game where they bring a corner off the edge and Corral doesn't touch anybody and Tosh Baker doesn't touch anybody. Those are mental mistakes. It's like, guys, so we can get into some of the technique, but I mean, you're either going to slide protection one way and everybody's going to adjust that way, or you block things inside out. So it's like you inside out first to the outside guy. And like literally those kids look like they have blindfolds on. So yes.
I'm sure we will have
a lot there.
Yeah, we'll talk a lot more about the quarterbacks. I'm sure we will get some more questions, and we will discuss those in a little bit. But offensive line, you kind of talked about that just a second ago, was something we'll touch on. So what's the issues going on with the offensive line? I know you're not a self-proclaimed offensive line guru, but I'm sure you know more about offensive line play than 98% of people out there, if not 99. So what's your take on this Notre Dame offensive line right now? How fixable is this? Is this just going to be the rest of the season? What do you think, Mike?
It's going to be the rest of the season unless it gets fixed. That's 2 weeks in a row We've given up corner blitzes. Kids have come free as an arrow. Some of that's on the quarterback. Some of that's on the running back. So, like, you teach a running back, they call it search lighting. So you almost think of like a lighthouse, right? So they're going to see things inside out, right? That's how they protect it, or outside in, depending on what their coach is asking them to do. But some of the stuff is physical mistakes. I mean, you're obviously playing against a great player in that end, number 5, Karlaftis, great player. So it's like, does that offensive lineman set vertical in that? I've mentioned this before, like staying on railroad tracks, so he's going to set vertical. So let's get into technique. Somebody was blasting us on the message board that we didn't get into the minutia here, so we'll do it. So if I'm playing right tackle, right, I'm lug. So like you're kick sliding, so your left foot has to stay up to prevent somebody from coming upfield and coming inside, right? So you can be able to step down. And then it's like, when are we punching? So there was a play where Karlaftis, he beat Lug so cleanly, and he just did like an over-the-top swipe move, and that as Lug is going into his pass set, he's already giving the end his hands. Do you understand?
Sure.
So he's just leaving them out there almost as a target, and the guy just swipes them away. So you'd like your offensive linemen to be able to tempo their pass set, and also time their punch, right? And oftentimes you don't want to give them both hands at the same time, right? So you're either going to punch your outside hand or punch your inside hand. He gave them both, and so a lot of it's technique. But again, I go back to, I think it was the first couple series where they bring a corner fire, the end crashes down, and there might have been 2, if not 3 dudes that were just clean. So that's not physical, that's mental. And there's no even real reaction, Mike, that like they're turning like, oh crap, I missed my block. Like they're turning. It's like the behavior after the miss almost tells you that they thought they were doing what they should have been doing. Like, oh, that's somebody else's guy. Does that make sense, Mike?
Sure.
Like a lot of times you'll see a DB give up a big play and they're looking to the safety, or they're arguing with somebody else underneath coverage. There was no discussion after that play. It was like, okay, we did our thing. So again, I'm no expert on offensive line, Mike, but I can't imagine a scenario, maybe a screen, where both your left guard and your left tackle's assignment is to whiff. So it's and then the other thing was, I wanted to give Coach Reese a little bit of credit. We've kind of tried 3 things. So we bring in Joe Alt and switch up the number from 76 to 45, which
Love
is
that,
clever,
man.
right?
Love that, man.
Yeah, it's clever. But I did notice, like, Alt, I'm like, oh, maybe this kid's going to go out on some routes, but he was knee braced up, elbows, wrists, like he was dressed to play offensive line, if you follow me, right? In particular with the knee braces, which also tells me that obviously Tosh doesn't, or Baker doesn't really have a backup. I guess it is Alt, but like they've told Alt, like, hey man, get ready to play. So it's like, you're not going to play tight end. You need to have your knee braces on just in case you need to come in and legitimately play left tackle. So I thought that was interesting to see, and Alt looked good. Good technique. He's been working with his dad. Like, he stepped down, right? So oftentimes offensive linemen, they step underneath themselves when they're going to make a block, whereas he stepped down. We tried to run some misdirection to slow down the pass rush. Ironically, gave up a tackle for loss. But ultimately, we went tempo, and that's where we seem to kind of find our groove and almost slow the defense down. It was as much us finding our groove as much as it was kind of making that defense breathe a little bit harder and kind of slow them down. So offensive line is still definitely a work in progress, and the tackles are always more glaring. Caden Madden is like Jack Cohn. It's like you kind of know what he is. Like the ceiling, we talk about ceiling and floor. Like the floor is higher with Caden Madden, but the ceiling's also lower. So not a lot of movement, not a lot of intensity. And some of that's got to fall on Patterson, like as the leader of the group. That's been kind of groomed by these guys that came before him. So some of that's, you can blame, Coach Quinn all you want, but I always tend to look at the player and say, hey, Jarrett, maybe you got to step up your vocal game, um, and bring those guys along with you.
Let's kind of step back a second and look at all of this now. We've talked about the quarterbacks, receivers, so it's a little whole picture. So it's okay. You got a quarterback with a really strong arm. All right, really strong arm. He takes shots downfield. Okay, Jack Cohn takes shots downfield, even though he missed some. That is a strong part of his game. You saw it against Florida State. He completed some nice balls. So you have that side of it. I'm going to pound my fist on the table and say Jack Cohn could throw the ball well downfield. If you disagree, Mike, let's just table that for later.
I disagree. Go ahead.
He's a lot less mobile, right? And you need mobility with a stinky offensive line, right? Notre Dame pass protection, although I feel like it got better from Toledo to Purdue, especially against a better defensive line. Cohn was sacked several times, but it wasn't like every single play he was under duress, right? They definitely did some things.
Well, when he wasn't getting sacked, we were having false starts. It's still ugly. It's still very ugly. But yes, go continue.
Slightly better though, than an improvement at least somewhat from Toledo.
Sure.
The run blocking stinks, but I feel like it did get. It was he had some cleaner pockets. I thought Baker looked better than he did against Toledo, but okay. So then it's all right. I see Notre Dame fans are saying, well, how do you know that Buckner's not better than Cohn? Well, one, you have to trust a little bit the coaches that have seen these guys in practice throughout spring ball, throughout fall camp. Media got 3 minutes of practice during spring ball, very much what Notre Dame wanted to put out. And then during fall camp, media got, I don't know, maybe 3 hours tops to watch practice over 30 days or whatever it was. So it's like, do you just dump Cohn? Like, do you run 50-50 split between the quarterbacks? Like, I don't know if there's like a clear best option for Notre Dame other than what they're doing right now. I mean, if you're Brian Kelly, what are you doing differently with this offense to make it holistically better? I mean, look, you can talk about, well, they should never have been in this situation to start with, or this is what's better for next year. They can't think about next year. They got to play for now. Good luck telling Drew White, your middle linebacker, your Mike Goolsby, if you will, hey, tough crap, but we're just gonna throw out a freshman and we're gonna lose 5 games. Like, I don't know.
What? See, but here's the thing. There's one point. Who's to say that if you roll Tyler Buchner out, you're going to automatically lose 5 games? That's not fair.
Sure.
And that's just like saying he can't throw the ball because all they do is run. And I'm saying it's not that they don't let him throw the ball because he doesn't have arm talent or whatever. I don't think that they trust him to make the throw because he's so young. They trusted Ian Book to run the offense and not pull the trigger because he never turned the ball over or rarely did, right? So there's a lot of gray there. But I do think when we go back to our initial topic of conversation, this will all bear itself out, Mike. But I feel like the level of disengagement from those receivers, and we touched on this last week, was kind of that locker room dynamic. These receivers, as I said, real recognizes real. And I'm like, I do feel like that if these guys are getting open and the ball's not getting delivered, they're going to want Buchner in the game just because he brings more energy, he's more dynamic, whatever. Do I think that and this is great fodder for the message board, I don't know if Buchner did hurt his hamstring or maybe there's a little bit of gamesmanship there in lieu of the Wisconsin game. It's fun to consider. You follow me, Mike? So we're going to put him on the bench for the rest of the game so as not to give Wisconsin more film of Tyler to be able to break down and prepare for. It's interesting.
I don't know if Notre Dame had a comfortable enough lead to do that though, because the way
the defense was playing, I think they did.
I mean, it was a one-score game until they scored that late touchdown to cover the spread.
Well, we like to talk about that though. Like when as a fan, when you're watching the game, do you feel like the game's under wraps or in control?
They felt in control the whole game.
I kind of did. I felt like the second half it was very sort of pedestrian, but I didn't feel like that it was as hectic as like the Toledo game was. You follow me?
So my whole
spiel, needed Buchner to win the game, by the way. But go ahead.
So my whole spiel there, you kind of latched on to the end part. But what about the rest of it? Like what? And then we're going to move on to some defensive talk. So we need to talk about that group because that.
Oh, we
Um,
don't have to.
oh no, we
But yeah,
will.
go ahead. So I hung on to the end. What did I miss, Mike? I don't have the attention span you do.
I mean, what are you doing differently? I mean,
Oh, sure.
I mean, is there a solution? Are you splitting the rest 50-50? Put your, let's say Mike Goolsby is the head coach of Notre Dame right now. What are you doing?
Um, I still think you probably move the pocket a little bit more quick game until that line gets shored up. Move the pocket a little bit more quick game and inside zone. This outside stretch plays, it hasn't worked.
Right.
It just hasn't worked. Um, but I'm not the head coach, but you got to get the ball out quick with Cone and or leave a. I don't like the idea of. I guess it's cute and it's interesting to put Alt in as a backup tight end hybrid tackle thing, but you can leave 85 in there just to chip and then release, right? So I don't know. I think if Cone can get the finger thing and the accuracy figured out, we'll be all right. Yes, the offensive line has shown incremental improvement, but we do give up a lot of sacks. So I'm not optimistic about this Wisconsin game. Is all I know.
No.
They've got a great young defensive coordinator. They've had an extra week of prep. They play like super strong fundamental defense. They're going to cook up a lot of blitzes.
Sure.
So it's like, do we trust Cone to decipher that blitz or to see it and check out of things? Do we trust our offensive line? I might trust the former more than I trust the latter. So then, or do you just let your athlete go back there and run around and just try and play a little backyard football? Backyard football, if you guys watch the NFL, I was watching a couple games earlier.
Tyler Murray.
That, well, I mean, like even look at Herbert. Like again, all these
Herbert. Yeah.
quarterbacks that we're talking about, they're freaky stud athlete type guys. Like they're escapability. Edge rushers have gotten so good. I mean, and again, like Karlaftis is a perfect example of that. Like you could tell though these kids work that technique. So to me, it's like run your offense through Cone, run your offense through Buckner. Plain and simple. Maybe you have a few more deep plays called for Buckner, or excuse me, with Cone in the game, and with Buckner in the game, you call less, maybe deep ball type plays, and you sprinkle in more RPO. Maybe that's what I'm doing, but I'm utilizing Buckner.
Yeah. By the way, Matt says, love the hoodie, Goolsby. Congrats on making
It's
Joliet
Noost.
Catholics Hall of Fame.
I went to high school with Noost
Oh, nice.
and college. He actually went to Notre Dame.
There you go.
So
Well, what's
yeah,
up, Matt?
Noost. Thanks for the text. I didn't text you back. I owe you a text.
All right, one more thing. Tell me if I'm crazy here. I feel like Notre Dame fans are kind of conditioned to not see a lot of sacks because Ian Book just evaded so many, in that Cohen's getting a lot of the blame for the sacks when, I mean, do you think he's holding the ball too long? I mean, would you rather throw an interception? I mean, I know Notre Dame fans would be pissed if, we just started throwing the ball away all the time. I mean, talk to me.
That's go back and watch the Purdue game. And I have these notes in my phone, but they put Buckner in the last possession of the first half. And they slid number 5, Karlaftis, to a 3 technique, and he beat Cade Madden bad.
Yeah.
Inside stutter step, and then he spun on an inside spin. He's in Buckner's lap. There's nothing Cone can do about it. It's not his fault. It's not like a blitz that he missed, anything like that. Cade Madden got physically beat like a drum, whiffed, brutal. Buckner runs for first down. Cone's going to eat that ball. So we go from having 4 sacks to 5. So many of these things, they fall on the offensive line. Just physical mistakes, mental mistakes. You're seeing offensive tackles at Notre Dame getting sat down by a Purdue defensive end. It's just, yeah, we're not accustomed to seeing that. But that's physical stuff. That's technique stuff that we kind of touched on earlier. But that's Pros and cons, Mike.
Right.
That leaky offensive line, it's just the unpredictability of like where is this going to come from? That's a pro for Buckner. It
Right.
just is. It just is. It's like I said, it's not Cohen's fault if my guard gets beat on the inside. It's like you're not playing against Aaron Donald, but if he's in my lap right now, there's nothing Cohen can do other than eat the ball.
Right. Yeah, the game of football. If you got a defensive tackle getting in your face right away, there's nothing. I mean, defensive tackles aren't supposed to be able to get to the quarterback like that.
Yeah, and Cohen, did what he could as far as sliding around and trying to buy some time. He made some nice throws on the run. And again, they were nice throws. They weren't necessarily as accurate as they needed to be, Mike. But he's doing what he can. Again, I'm not knocking Cohen. You stay with Cohen, but if you're going to put Buckner in the game, you have to let him run the offense.
Yeah. No. Switching the earbuds. Let's hope we don't.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
All right. Again, we appreciate everyone joining us live here. Make sure you hit that thumbs up. Drop us a super chat if you want to get to your questions right away. We are getting pretty close to taking questions straight from the message board chat. But Mike, let's move to the opposite side of the ball after we've been talking about the quarterbacks and the O-line
defense. Yeah, let's talk some defense.
The first 41 minutes, but defense created some turnovers.
Hell yeah.
Won the possession battle 2-0. We haven't even talked about the rushing offense yet, so I'm curious to get your thoughts there. But we'll take that. We'll discuss that in a little bit. What did you see from the defense? Who are you really excited about on that side of the ball, and who are you less than thrilled about?
So, yes, love to see turnovers. Love to see it. I mean, the last one was kind of garbage time turnover, but I still love to see it. In a lot of ways, you can make an argument that if we can be on the plus side of the turnover margin, it might give Coach Kelly 20% more confidence in playing Buckner because, the likelihood that he might throw an errant pass, like a pick six like Cohen already has, but maybe we might get one back. So it's nice to see turnovers. But I do want to take a second to talk about Kyle Hamilton. And he's been playing for the Irish for so long now that we probably take him for granted. And I would probably cop to that. He's a special, special player. We all know that, but when you really watch him play a full game, he is something. I mean, like you're watching greatness. I mean, you're watching a future all-pro type kid. He is outstanding. You've got to mention Bertrand, just playing downhill, playing relentless. He's always in the frame. Number 95, I'm not going to try and pronounce his name. He had a hell of a game. Looking a little bit like an Aaron Donald almost, just cat quickness in there.
He was sliding into the 3 technique, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So defense seems to have plugged a couple things up. I think we gave up one long run, and that was an interesting call. We brought a corner blitz. But it was almost to like the wide side-ish of the field. So typically you'll see a corner blitz from the short side of the field. So he's got a big window to make that tackle. You have to make the tackle nonetheless. But yeah, defense seemed to we've seen less of that 3-man kind of hybrid front with Foskey in the box. We pulled it out of the bag a few times, which is what we were kind of asking for, Mike. We got home quite a bit. The sacks that we got, ironically, when we brought pressure, they weren't like immediate sacks or immediate pressure. It took us sometimes maybe a second longer to get there. It almost seemed like a coverage sack, which tells me that it's tough to see some of the stuff on the TV copy, obviously, Mike, but it tells you that the corners and the safeties were doing their part, right? Because the quarterback kind of gets away or he steps up and he's looking, and there's still nothing there, and then eventually just gets enveloped by the front. So that's nice to see too. Sometimes when you bring a blitz, pop, you want to get home run, sack. Sometimes it doesn't happen that way. We'll work, motor. You finally get home, and the secondary's holding up. So great effort overall. When I think of defensive football, that's leading with effort tends to be it should be the MO of a strong defense, and now we're starting to create turnovers. So good things.
We definitely spent a long time talking about the offense, so not as much time here to talk about the defense. But anything else you wanted to add on that group before we move into questions, Mike?
Um, only now, I mean, we can jump into questions, but
All right,
I love rotating, but I feel like we over rotate at times. I feel like we over rotate at times. But that's about it. That's my only
sure,
thoughts. Defense played great.
sure. All right, Mark Kramer asked, "Do you think Tyler will become the starter sometime this season?" I mean, are you factoring in injuries? Because if injuries are involved, I mean, there's always unexpected injuries that could happen. Knock on wood, but do you have a take on this, Mike? I don't really have one.
I'll probably say I'll play ball, Mike.
Okay,
Right? I'll play ball. Uh, I think that he'll end up starting a game or two. Right? He'll end up starting a game or two. If we lose a couple games, it lends itself more to Tyler starting. If Cone isn't more accurate, Cone played bad to me, but I'm giving him a bit of a pass because of the finger. I am, but he was very inaccurate, and that throw to Mayer, it just seemed really off. So if you see more of that from Cone, you're going to start to see probably a little bit more Tyler. Yeah, but I would say there's probably a 60% chance you see Tyler start at some point this season. Yes.
so we disagree on the cone because I feel like if there's just one or two, of those that just missed on, we're looking at 300 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns compared to 223 yards and 2 touchdowns.
I'm just telling you, I'm basing a lot of, I have a fairly strong opinion about this, Mike. And I'm looking at the body language of the receivers, and they know better than you and better than me or anybody on that message board. They do. And I just feel like they're kind of going through the motions because he's not going to be able to get me the ball with the right amount of touch. I'm just telling you. That's just as an ex-player, that's just kind of what I see. It's how I interpret it.
Can't argue with you on that. Scott says, why the 3-3-5 on defense? Don't feel like we can get pressure on the quarterback. Did seem like they ran a lot less 3-3-5 against Purdue, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, 3-3-5 is great. Mixing up looks is great, but it's got to be situational. There's a time and a place for it. So why, to answer the question, is just multiplicity. So I've got Foskey over here. I've got this guy over here. Like you're trying to put the offense on their heels because they don't know who's coming and where they're coming from. That's the general idea of it. But it's not a it's not a 1st and 10 front.
Sure.
It's a 3rd and obvious front. So situationally, then maybe Coach Freeman had to run it against Florida State to get the reps. Maybe he knows, hey, I don't really want to run this on 2nd and 6, but I got to get the rep. I have to get the film. I don't know.
Sure. A question on the linebacker specifically. Glad we have one on this. Aside from perhaps J.D. Bertrand, the linebackers don't seem to be out to edges quickly and not getting blitz calls or not getting through on blitzes. Thoughts on this in the linebacker play, Mike?
I'm just trying to read it. Aside from Bertrand, they don't seem to get to the edges quickly and getting blitz calls and not getting blitz calls and not getting through. So I'll talk about getting to the edges. That just depends on how week to week. So is your defensive end, is he spilling the ball? And that if he sees a down block in front of him, let's say the tackle goes down, who's going to climb to the second level, climb to, like, let's say the Mike. So here comes my pulling guard. Is that end going to wrong arm it and make the ball bounce outside, spilling the ball, or is that end taught to force the ball, right? So if the end's forcing it where his outside arm is free, the linebackers have to fit inside of him. If he's spilling the ball, the linebacker has to fast flow over the top. So it just depends on how that defense is called. Drew White still seems a little bit uncomfortable. He had one tackle against Toledo, which is absurd. So how can Bertrand be getting double digits and you're getting one? This is where I was talking about with that rotation. So this week, both Bo Bauer had 5 and Drew White had 5, but Drew White's a captain, so you're never really going to truly demote him to being a non-starter, factor. But I do think that Bauer has a higher upside. You see Drew White miss a lot of tackles just because his arms are so damn short. Like he'll get there, but he doesn't have like the ability to actually like wrap up because he has, short arms. I don't really know about the blitzing. I'll add this. There was a play early in the game where walked up, both inside linebackers are walked up in that mug technique. They flare the running back. We're in a man-to-man coverage scenario, and Bertrand's late because he has to bubble over the top to get out. He's walked up in the A gap, then he has to kind of retrace and widen, which gives the back more room to operate once he catches the ball. Later on in the game, when we were in that man-to-man, he was backed up and he had a proper angle and made a beautiful tackle. I don't like the fact that our inside linebackers, they don't hold their, this is like coach speak, they don't hold their water when they're going to blitz. They're always freaking telegraphing it. I've been watching Drew White do this for 2 years. It's like, hold your water, but they come up like they're going to blitz, and then the offense knows you're coming. It's just like, wait, get a sense of the cadence, get a sense of the wide receiver motion when you're going to take off. They're always antsy pants. It drives me nuts. So hopefully that answers the question.
Moving along, question / I don't think there's actually a question in here. This one's kind of getting me fired up a little bit. So far, Cone,
Mike's fired up. Mike's fired up.
I don't know why I'm becoming now the Jack Cone.
You're a Jack Cone defender.
And see, this one I just disagree.
Let's read it, Mike.
So far, Cone is a game manager. No way possible that Notre Dame is a playoff team with him, and I really like the kid. If you put him on like an Alabama, he's a playoff quarterback. Like if the pieces are around him, he can. I don't get this. If you put him on last year's team, they have a better chance of winning a college football playoff game than with Ian Book. I just don't agree with this. I think that he can play at that level. Now
No, hang on. Let me push back, Mike.
Okay.
So if he's on Alabama last year, Alabama wins the title.
I think so.
All right. Can I draw a line between? So are you saying that Jack Cone is as good as Mac Jones was?
Mac Jones is more accurate.
Bigger.
And I've seen a lot more of Mac Jones than I have of Jack Cone
Bigger
at this
arm.
point. But the game manager thing, no. When you think about a Wisconsin quarterback, the dinks and dunks and just hand the ball off and don't screw up, the Notre Dame running game is non-existent, right? If Tyler Buchner is not in the game, they can't run the ball. They're literally saying, Jack, go win us the football game. How is that a game manager?
You just said if Tyler Buchner's not in the game, we can't run the ball.
Right.
So why wouldn't you have more Tyler in the game? He freezes the defense up because his threat, again, you're going to slow down inside linebacker pursuit as somebody that played the position. You're going to slow down inside linebacker pursuit if the quarterback is as much of a threat to pull the ball, that's how the offense builds and builds and builds. But I think part of it, Mike, is let's stay on this. I think part of it's and I reference this in terms of what do we know about Jack Cone? We know he loves Notre Dame, right? It's a plus. It makes it's heartwarming, right? Makes you want to pull for the kid. And we know he's a calm demeanor.
Yeah.
Anything? What am I missing? Anything in terms of what we've heard in terms of traits from the coaching staff?
Did you say leadership?
I mean, calm demeanor, leadership. Whatever. So
experience. Experience is something they talk about a lot.
Yeah, sure, experience. So, but there's only one way to get experience, and we know that. But yeah, I mean, Mac Jones has a bigger arm. I think it's Notre Dame has done this to themselves because they haven't talked about, he breaks down defenses. He's got an above average arm. I haven't heard anything of that sort. So then you just see him with that weird throwing motion, that shot put kind of push thing, and then you see the inaccuracy. It's like, we'll give him another couple games, but he was bad this week. He was bad. And I'm going to say it was due to the finger, but him almost getting Michael Mayer killed on a 5-yard pass is unacceptable.
I mean, you're going to tell me that other quarterbacks don't lead their receivers into harm's way at times? I mean, I just don't understand, wanting to – and you're saying you're giving them a pass on the thumb, but, I mean, it happens. Good quarterbacks do that. I mean, they're not infallible.
Well, uh, somebody's got to, and the data's out there, Mike. If you looked at all the deep ball statistics of this last game, it was brutal, dude. And some of that's on the receivers, like we talked about,
Yeah.
whatever. But I'm talking about the body language. I'm just telling you, dude. I was watching it
I
and I
believe
was
you.
like, and I was more of a Jack Cohn fan than I was up until last game because I was like, man, this is bad because these dudes are open. And when's the last time we saw a receiver even get open? So these guys are open. They
True.
have separation. They had separation, and the ball's not put where it needs to be.
I think we can agree on this for
We got to move on.
Notre Dame's passing offense. I hope they still get those single coverage. Like get the one on one so they can, try
Well, the reason you're getting the single coverage, Mike. This is the beauty of football. That's why I love the game so much. The reason you're getting single coverage is because they're bringing extra rushers because we can't pick shit up, right? So all of this quarterback conversation, controversy, it's fun. If the offensive line gets fixed, Cone's your starter.
yeah. That's
Period.
what we've been
But
saying. Yeah.
and if we're going to go try and win games in some form or fashion, then maybe you give Buckner a little bit more PT because we know what the escapability. Anyways, moving
Okay.
on, Mike.
So I made the comment of
Yes, Patty. Yes,
the
Tyler can throw. He just doesn't have a grasp of the offense.
right.
100%.
Right. So that's what I kind of said. Like, if this offense, like, they can't run the ball without Tyler. So then it's like, okay, if Tyler can run, um, can he and he can throw? Why isn't he playing more? And that's kind of just one of those things. I'm like, I would like to think that the coaching staff kind of knows a little bit more on this. That they don't feel like he's ready to go. Like, if they just gave him the keys right now, then it might not go well, and they think that Cone and what they're doing right now gives them the best chance to win.
I think Kelly is hyper conservative at that quarterback position. So until
Not been
he's
his great
maybe,
point, that's for sure.
I'm sorry,
Not been his strongest position, that's for sure. I mean,
hyper conservative. So and I played Bob Davie when he like Mike before we'd leave the locker room. Like the last thing he would say to the quarterback is, "Don't turn the ball over." So it's not like, "Hey, let your hair down, let it rip.
right.
We're gonna cut these guys up." It's not that. So I think that's where Kelly's operating from a worst case scenario. Like that's where he's operating from. That's his starting point. Is like worst case scenario. Buckner goes out there and throws 2 picks. But again, we've already seen Cone throw a pick six, right? On a pretty basic concept.
Yeah.
So until the coaching staff realizes what they have in Buckner, and you're going to take the good with the bad, he can take a would-be surefire sack and pick up a first down. Um, you got to live with this stuff, and that's you have to live with it. That's like you recruited this kid, and he has all these tools and all these God-given ability. Let him go use it. And yes, he might screw up, but as the defense starts to improve, maybe you can take those blows because the upside is so high. At least that's what people like me tend to see. But yes, Patty, that would be the answer to the question. And if he was ever, somebody was talking about online, oh, he was inaccurate during fall camp. It's like, yeah, dude, he's trying to learn the offense. He's trying to process a lot of different things. But what I'm saying, Mike, I want this to be like my most kind of like salient thought here is like, when I see Cone have success, they are predetermined, designed, schemed routes. I'm going to Kyron because he's matched up on that inside linebacker, on that inside slant. I'm going to Avery Davis. They're like scheme throws. Hell, half the throws that we make, Mike, are just little swing passes to the running back. He's not back there. Cone's not back there going through 2, 3, 4 progressions. It's just not the case. I think Tyler can do that. What's the next question, Mike?
We are going to take no more questions. We're going to discuss one last thing. As a Notre Dame man like
Yes.
yourself, your thoughts on this when you were playing, how much was Newt Rockne discussed? Your thoughts on the 105? Maybe if you have any thoughts on Notre Dame continuing to say screw the NCAA, we're counting these wins. You see the NBC graphic, the 21. This is an NBC graphic, by the way. 21 wins and vacated by the NCAA. Notre Dame wouldn't even put that little asterisk. They say screw that. All of these things, Mike. What do you got to say?
It's a hell of an accomplishment. Um, I wish it's hard to be considered. How are we going to measure greatness, Mike? Longevity, right? So Kelly's been a great coach. He's won a boatload of games that we never won the whole thing under his tenure. So that would be like the biggest almost asterisk to me is you won X number of games and you never won a big one. So I think until Kelly would be he'll be if he ever wins a championship he'll be more remembered for that than he ever would the number of wins
Right.
that he had.
Would you agree with this that he has done everything he needs to at Notre Dame except win a national championship?
Yeah, I was back home in Joliet this past weekend and there's talked to a lot of different people about Notre Dame football and there's a lot of Notre Dame football fans obviously. Um, but almost everybody was knocking Kelly, and I understand, but he's done a tremendous job. I think he's modernized the program. I think he's figured out how to recruit. Kelly's been an exceptional coach, and everybody has their foibles. I wish he was more like he's not. He doesn't have like the personality to be like endearing, like a Lou Holtz would, and even like Saban is somewhat endearing. Dabo is endearing. I mean, Sabo, I mean, he'll get up there and say some powerful things, and he has a little bit of a sense of humor. Kelly hasn't been the most endearing person, I think, as far as like fandom is
Like
concerned.
likable.
Yeah, like likable. Um, that's my 2 cents on it, but it's a tremendous accomplishment. But it's like being the world's tallest short person, right? Like it's great that you won 105 games, but have you won anything that of any consequence, right? That's what we're here for.
That's what it comes down to. How do you look at
Hmm.
this? You can just look at it multiple ways. If it's national championship, that's all I care about as a Notre Dame fan. I don't care about 10 wins. I don't care about 11 wins. Don't care about an ACC championship game appearance. It's just not. And then that's your that's your opinion. Stick to it. Like that's your right. But if you're also the mindset of think about where the team was at. Heck, even during the Mike Goolsby era with Davey, Willingham, Weiss, some of the, and look at where it's come to now. It just kind of depends on how you look at it.
Yeah, like I said, I think overall, I just think when I said that Kelly sort of modernized the program, I really mean that. Like he's kept a lot of the tradition, created some new traditions, he breathed some life into the program. And I'll just tell you, folks, like I played for Tyrone Willingham, and he spoke he spoke to like our dorm. He went on like almost a campus tour. He spoke to the I lived in St. Edward's Hall, spoke to us in the chapel. My roommate, um, he comes back to the room afterwards. He's like, "Man, there's going to be a statue of him one day." Right? That's how strongly he felt about Willingham. And remember, I mean, we're on the cover of Sports Illustrated, blah blah blah. Like we thought that Willingham was a great coach, and 6 years later he's unemployed. Right? At least as far as a coach is concerned. So there's not. I guess the point I'm trying to make is there are not that many Urban Meyer, Nick Saban's, Dabo Sweeney's in the world. There's just not.
Heck, Joel
There's just
Klatt.
not.
Joel Klatt made a list of if I were the AD, and we're running a little bit long here. If I were the AD at USC, here's the guys that I would make them tell me no. Like this is my top of the board guys. I think Urban Meyer. He didn't put Nick Saban on there because he was like he just wouldn't do it. It's like Urban Meyer, Dabo Sweeney. I think there's one or two other names. Maybe Ryan Day or Lincoln Riley.
Matt Campbell, Iowa State. Yeah.
I don't know if he was on that side, but Brian Kelly was on there. Brian
Yeah.
Kelly was on there. I mean,
So it's just, all of us are trying to get better in our lives. It's like, okay, where we should be constantly looking at yourself in the mirror. And this Tyler Buckner situation and your inability to develop like stud quarterbacks, we've only really had one. I mean, and that was Deshaun Kaiser. And then in terms of under Kelly, and the last stud quarterback was maybe, I guess, Jimmy Clausen was kind of like a stud quarterback, but Brady Quinn was a stud quarterback, and Brady Quinn played as a true freshman. So I just think sometimes if and Brady Quinn is an exceptional person, right? So I think that Tyler's an exceptional kid, an exceptional athlete. I just think that I don't know. I hate to keep bringing it back to this. It's going to be fun to watch this unfold, though, Mike, over the next 3-4 weeks.
Well, a very fun discussion here. We've been doing podcasts and shows with Mike Goolsby for 18, 19 months now, and I don't think I've ever challenged him on anything we've ever debated quite like that. So, I feel like, a little Skip Bayless, your little Stephen A. Smith, or.
I'd rather be Shannon Sharp.
Okay, former player. There you go. Shannon Sharp, that
Yeah,
makes sense. Do you ever watch those FS1 shows?
of course not. No,
Yes, you do. You love
no.
Cowherd, so you watch that stuff.
Well, I used to love Cowherd when he was on the East Coast still. I think he's gotten a little. I like. I'm talking, over a decade ago. He was a lot edgier than he is
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, he's mellowed out. I feel
So,
like all of his social media posts, he's high as a kite, and all right, that's not what
God
people.
bless him.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, Mike, a lot of fun. Appreciate you guys tuning in live show. If you listen via podcast, make sure to leave us a review. Head to blueandgold.com for all of your Fighting Irish football and recruiting coverage. And make sure you hit that thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to our channel if you have not yet. Appreciate you guys. We'll catch you next time.